Well, good morning. I'd like to call the Joint Subcommittee on General Government to order. Secretary, will you please call roll?
Assemblywoman Gorlow.
Here.
Assemblyman Hafen.
Here.
Assemblywoman Howdigi.
Here.
Assemblyman Levitt. Assemblywoman Miller.
Here.
Assemblywoman Peters.
Here.
Senator Dennis.
Here.
Senator Goycochea.
Here.
Chair Brooks.
Here, thank you very much. Please mark Assemblyman Levitt present when he arrives. I would like to remind the members of the public who are joining us this morning on ways they can participate. If you look at the agenda as posted online, it has a number to call and how to get to our website. You can go to the Nevada Legislature's website and go to the NELIS section of Nevada's NELIS section of the Nevada Legislature's website. And there is a banner where you can join. And it also has the phone numbers you can call if you want to make public comment, which will come at the very end of this agenda this morning. This morning, our subcommittee will hear a presentation from the Department of Administration. Excuse me. We'll hear the budgets for the Director's Office, Fleet Services, and Human Resource Management. This morning, we have Director Freed to present to us. Director Freed, will you please begin your presentation?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the subcommittee. For the record, my name is Laura Freed. I serve as Director of the Department of Administration. I'm joined by the Administrator of our Administrative Services Division, Matthew Tuma, who's our Chief Fiscal Officer, as well as Fleet Services Administrator, Robbie Burgess, and Human Resource Management Administrator, Peter Long. And I will lead it off with a brief discussion, no PowerPoint presentation for the Director's Office budget because it's such a small budget. So with that, we have just a couple of small replacement equipment and new equipment decision units in the governor's recommended budget, just 2 computers in replacement for a total of $4,129 over the biennium. The first year expenses are for the Women's Commission, so they're funded by the general fund, and the second year expenses are funded by the Director's Office cost allocation. Under new equipment E720, $835 per fiscal year for new Adobe software. Again, part of it is for the Women's Commission, funded by the general fund, and the Director's Office half is funded by the cost allocation. Also, the third and final decision unit I will speak on this morning is a reclassification. The governor recommends reclassification of a Management Analyst 2 position that supports the Women's Commission to an Administrative Assistant 3. That's because of a change in duties to the position. This position has been vacant since last December. And E805 is the reclassification of this position, and E225 adjusts the funding source from 100% general fund to 50% general fund and 50% Director's Office cost allocation. So there, in E805, that represents a general fund savings of $80,746 over the biennium. There's an additional general fund savings involved with splitting the position's funding support 50-50 between Director's Office cost allocation and general fund. The savings in this decision unit is $26,706 in the first year. And I should note actually that it should be $27,706. It was simply miskeyed. So I'd be happy to work with your staff on a little bit of a technical fix there. In the second year, the savings from the adjustment to the fund mapping of the position is $28,897. So overall, these 2 decision units save the state $137,000 $137,349 over the biennium. Now, I wanted to speak just a second about the reason for the reclassification. Per NRS 233I, the Secretary of State is required to conduct an annual survey of businesses of 100 employees or more about gender equality in the workplace, assisted by the Nevada Commission for Women. This portion of NRS 233I expires by limitation on December 31st, 2022. That survey was the reason that the management analyst was added by the 2017 legislature. So since the survey requirement is ending and the members of the commission have indicated that they can do their own policy analysis and sort of higher level examination of women's issues in this state, and because we were asked to provide budget reductions, both in the current biennium and the upcoming biennium, it seemed an opportune time to take this step of reclassification. This was discussed with Commission for Women members, and they understand the rationale for it, and they've indicated that administrative support is all they really need, so they support it. And with that, Mr. Chairman, I am happy to take the subcommittee's questions about the Director's Office budget.
Thank you, Ms. Freed. I believe that Assemblywoman Peters has a question for you on this budget item.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for the discussion of the budget. I have two questions, if I may. I'll start with the first one. Can you talk more about what Department of Administration duties the position is anticipated to perform?
Yes, the Director's Office could really use some additional administrative support because we're a small budget. We only have 5 authorized positions, one of which is the Women's Commission position. And so as such, my executive assistant is the only support for myself and the deputy. And she would, like to be able to take a vacation once in a while and call in sick once in a while. So she would receive backup from the half-time allocation of this Administrative Assistant 3 position to keep the daily bills of the Director's Office moving, to interface with other departments, to keep the paper flow going when our executive assistant is otherwise occupied, because we do tend to give our executive assistants some special projects here and there because we have that flexibility, because that's an unclassified position, whereas we wouldn't ask an admin 3 to work out of class. So
Thank you. That makes a lot of sense. I understand wanting to take a vacation when you're the only staff who can do the things you do. My second question, if I may, Chair, has to do with the other half of that. Do you believe that the position could perform the necessary duties related to the Commission for Women on a part-time basis?
for the record, Laura Freed, through you, Mr. Chairman, to Assemblywoman Peters. I do, and this was a result of discussions when the GovRec budget was under development. I talked to Commission for Women Chair Joetta Brown, as well as Ann Silver, who from the Chamber of Commerce, about what they needed and the kind of support that they would like to have. And their discussions with me centered on, well, we need somebody to schedule meetings, make sure we're working with our DAG to conform to the open meeting law, take the minutes, and, you know, in pandemic times, keep the Zoom running. And, you know, the other stuff we can handle ourselves because we're all professional women and we know what we want to do with this commission. And so they have indicated to me that they absolutely think half-time is sufficient because this, per statute, the Commission for Women only meets at least quarterly. They tend to meet monthly. They like to do that, but they're not required to. So.
Thank you for those responses. And always good to see you, Director Freed.
Thank you for the question, Assemblywoman. And Director Freed, I think with there's no other questions, I don't see any other questions on this budget. We can move to the next one.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I will hand it off to Fleet Services Division Administrator Robbie Burgess, who will go through his presentation.
Good morning, Chairman Brooks and fellow committee members. I'm Robbie Burgess. I'm the administrator for the Fleet Service Division. I want to start off, I have a very long, huge presentation for you folks today. I'm kidding. This is a short and sweet one. Are you able to see the presentation?
Yes, sir. You might want to put that in presentation mode so we just see the one slide.
Okay, presentation mode. Oh, I apologize. I'm not very good with this, folks.
Neither am I, or I'd be able to tell you where to go.
This is Broadcast Services. If you could go down to the corner of the, there you go, right there.
There we go. Okay. Okay. Start over. Once again, I'm Robbie Burgess with the Fleet Service Division. I'm the serving as the administrator for the division. And I just want to let you know I'll be going over budget account 1354 and 1356. They're both of my budget accounts that we see over. The mission with the Fleet Service Division, we are a division that provides services to all state vehicles that are leased for the department and under the department to all departments and divisions. One of our major services that we help manage fleets, and we also help guide the divisions and departments with their vehicle needs. One of our major strategies is to work with the private sectors on behalf of the state and provide vehicle needs for our customers, and our customers being all of the state of Nevada. We're guided under NRS 336. Of the services that we provide long-term vehicle assignments to agencies, short-term vehicle assignments, where the short-term is the vehicles that somebody, if they fly into Vegas or Reno, they can borrow or I shouldn't say borrow, they could lease a fleet service vehicle and go about their business and bring it back to us, throughout after their needs. We provide maintenance, fueling, reporting, and strategic fleet planning to outside agencies. Our current fleet size is 1,231 vehicles. We have a staff of 15 people. We have 3 facilities, one in Carson City here, Reno at the Reno Tahoe Airport, and at the Las Vegas McCarran Airport. Our current mileage that we've done over the past biennium or past fiscal year was 8.1 million miles, and we fulfilled about 8,700 vehicle rentals in fiscal 20. As far as enhancements for the Fleet Service Division, we're looking at hopefully getting and building a facility that will be in North Las Vegas at the Grant Sawyer facility, and that CIP is here this year. Last biennium we weren't able to do it, but this time we're ready to go. As far as deck units and enhancements for the Fleet Service Division, E720, we're looking at replacing 33 additional vehicles. These are vehicles that agencies have requested through GovRec, and they want to replace their agency vehicles with Fleet Service Division vehicles. The fiscal 22, they're looking at replacing 22 vehicles for a total of $836,791, and 11 additional vehicles in fiscal 23 for $504,227. the Fleet Service Division, through savings, with upcoming savings that we're going to have in this upcoming biennium, we were able to, along with the Admin Service Division, able to reduce our monthly service rates this upcoming biennium quite significantly. And a lot of that has to do with cost savings. And that's all through the compacted, through our specialty vehicles. And with the rate change impact, we were able to save agencies quite a bit of money, and I've highlighted those savings on the far right in red, and those are per month savings to outside divisions. So divisions should be able to save quite a bit of money. With the daily rates, the Fleet Service Division, along with ASD, we were able to keep our daily rates flat, so there's no increase in monthly rental rates. And historically, over the past bienniums, because of cost of goods, there always seems to be an increase in monthly prices. So we were able to keep everything flat for the outside departments and divisions. And that's pretty much it for budget account 1354. And before I segue into budget account 1356, do I have any questions?
You know what? Why don't you go ahead and do that next budget account, and we'll just ask the questions on both of your accounts.
Sounds good, Senator Brooks. Thank you. Budget account 1356 is pretty much just a holding account. These funds are brought into by repurposed vehicle sales, vehicles that are sold at auction, and insurance recoveries. So, and like I said, this budget account is just a holding account for vehicle purchases in the future. And that's pretty much it for 1356. And I'm available for any questions.
Great, thank you, Mr. Burgess. I have a question, maybe a couple of questions. You know, looking at the information provided on the individual vehicle selections, I think we just wanted to kind of maybe get a little bit of the rationale, and you know, if you could explain how you meet with the agencies to figure out what their vehicle needs are, and how you prioritize those needs within, you know, how you select vehicles.
For the record, Robbie Burgess, to answer your question, Senator Brooks, the agencies actually put in the request what they, when they, at the beginning of the budget period, they figure out their needs of what vehicles that they need. You know, say if it's the Department of Agriculture and they need a 4x4 pickup, they're the ones that are actually deciding what their vehicle needs are. And then how I process that on my end, what we do is we go out under state contract and find the best deal for the agency with their needs and finding the best price.
Chairman Brooks, this is Matthew Tuma, Administrator for ASD. Like to add on to that, because it is somewhat confusing seeing the deck unit in fleet services, where all these vehicle purchases do have corresponding deck units in the budget accounts where they're being requested. So like an example, in the Department of Administration, there's a vehicle request for Marlette Lake, where there's a specific deck unit in that budget account for a replacement of an agency-owned vehicle with a fleet service vehicle. So all of the details on the specifics of replacing a like vehicle with a like vehicle, or the specific make and model, are in those corresponding deck units in the budget accounts that are actually going to be receiving the vehicle.
Thank you, Mr. Jim. I appreciate that. And as you know, what kind of conversation is had, and what metrics do you use to decide whether or not we should be reassigning an existing vehicle that isn't getting used that much, or why not to pick on the AG's office, but why would a workers' comp fraud investigator need a $50,000 four-wheel drive 6-passenger SUV as opposed to a 2-passenger economy car, or even for the solely for the purposes of operating expenses, an electric vehicle or something like that? Like, what metrics are used to decide whether this, obviously some of these, like, cabin chassis for consumer equitability, really no other thing they can do there, or a four-wheel drive for ag dairy fund who's going out into the field. But some of these, I just use the AG's workers' comp fraud unit. How do you decide, okay, that this is an appropriate, is it a pass fail, or do you say, you asked for a Tahoe and you're going to get a Geo? Like, is there a process that you use to do that?
Robbie Burgess for Fleet Service Division. Like I said, Senator Brooks, I mean, I'm not the one that I'm filling their ask. If they're asking for a Suburban, I'm sure that's, that when they're going and doing their budget presentations, they're justifying their need to you folks. I'm the guy that's buying the vehicles for them and filling that need for them.
Matthew Tuma, for the record, administrator of ASD. I would add on to that that oftentimes for a replacement vehicle, they look at what the vehicle is that's being replaced, and you would replace it with a common vehicle. If those deck units do get approved by the legislature and move forward, they also have to go through a process of going to the Board of Examiners and identifying the specific needs and meeting those specific requirements. So there's a fairly lengthy process that agencies have to go through to actually replace the vehicles. But I think everybody's always more than willing to look at what their needs are and reassess and assess what vehicle matches those needs.
Thank you, Mr. Tuma. So there's a decision unit associated with the actual business or vehicle type that's going to be in that agency's budget that they submit. Is that what you're saying?
Correct.
Oh, okay, great. Well, that's helpful. I appreciate that. Now I think you're going to have a bunch of committee members asking the AG about their four-wheel drive SUVs. Well, I have no further questions. I really appreciate it. And again, I want to, urge, if only for the cost of operating expenses to the state of Nevada, that where possible, you consider electric vehicles if the range is appropriate and the use is appropriate. It's really, I think it's going to save the state a lot of money in operating expenses over the years. I do have a question from Senator Goicoechea, however.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I'm going to follow right along the lines you were just coming from. At what point is Fleet Services going to start moving towards, either hybrids or electric vehicles? Clearly this is a place we're headed, and just curious that at some point in this we're going to have to start transitioning.
Robbie Burgess, Fleet Service Division. Senator Goicoechea, and through you, Chair Brooks. Yes, Senator Goicoechea, the Fleet Service Division, electric vehicles are becoming more and more prevalent. Electric vehicles, a lot of the manufacturers are starting to produce more and more electric vehicles with the capability of traveling longer and farther. When the opportunity arises on this next biennium, the first thing I looked at is what vehicles were being requested and what I could fill with electric vehicles. And unfortunately, I think there was only one or two that were a possibility that I could put electric vehicles in. And I think they were in the Las Vegas region. So those are primed to put electric vehicles in. But until the manufacturers start with this current biennium, there was a lot of specialty pickup trucks, and unfortunately, a lot of the major manufacturers are not producing electric vehicle heavy-duty trucks yet. Ford is coming out with an electric F-150 this coming, I think, next couple of years. Is going to be shown, and but until then, once the manufacturers start producing the vehicles that would actually specifically fill the state's needs, I'll be all over that. And hopefully that answered your your question, Senator Goicoechea.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Matthew Tuma, for the record, Administrator of ASD. I would just like to add on to that part of that solution is also creating the charging infrastructure to support public vehicles. And that's an active thing that the Department of Administration is working on. In fact, the committee is going to be reviewing one of the Department of Administration CIP projects for fleet services at the Grant Sawyer building in Las Vegas, and charging stations are a component of that capital improvement project. So it's something that we're actively looking at through both fleet services and public works, how we can build the infrastructure necessary to support those vehicle requests in the future.
Thank you, Senator, for that question, and thank you, Mr. Tuma and Mr. Burgess. Assemblyman Hafen has a question as well.
Thank you, Chair. I did have a question. However, the senators already addressed those questions. Mine was related to electric vehicles, but if you would just indulge me for a second, I'd like to touch on the charging facilities. And more of a statement, I guess, is I do know that the rural parts of Nevada are really interested in expanding the charging station network. I received a call from Valley Electric, and so I would just encourage you guys while you're working on expanding those networks to include rural Nevadas. So Chair Brooks has a place to stop on the way up here, and the rest of us when we all switch over to electric vehicles. Thank you, Chair.
No, that's Assemblyman Hafen, that's a very valid point. As somebody who's drove 2 miles on Nevada's electric highway through mostly rural Nevada in an electric vehicle, Senator Goicoechea and Assemblyman Hafen, you have the best charging networks that I've used on that electric highway. So thank you for doing that.
Chair, I believe you muted yourself.
Sure did. Thank you. That's all the questions we have on these budget items. I appreciate your presentation this morning, Mr. Burgess, and answering our questions, as well as you, Mr. Tuma. And I believe that we can move on to our next budget item. And our next budget is going to be the Human Resource Management Budget 1363. So thank you.
Thank you, Chair Brooks.
Mr. Chairman, Laura Freed for the record. I will hand this one off to DHRM Administrator Peter Long.
Morning, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. For the record, I'm Peter Long. I serve as the administrator of the Division of Human Resource Management. Here today to present the budget for 1363. I have a short presentation. So this is the agency's organizational chart. The division structure, we have multiple sections: equal employment opportunity, employee and management services, central payroll and employee records, compensation, classification and recruitment, agency human resource services, our labor relations unit, and our Office of Employee Development. As you can see, this is just a breakdown of where our funding comes from. We have 81 employees, and it's basically 100% assessment. This is a breakdown of each functional area and what's spent in that area. This is the 1360 budget, which is not included in today's presentation, but this is for agency HR services. This is the 1363 budget, 10.5 million fiscal year 22, a little over 11 million for fiscal year 23. And getting to the meat of our request, we're asking for a couple enhancements. One is to reclassify our current payroll manager, who's a management analyst 4, to a new job title of payroll manager. This position currently supervises or manages 14 positions, both in the payroll section and the records section. And it was reclassified to a management analyst for about 15 years ago. And we've been fortunate to find folks to fill that position. But as you may know, the management analyst 4 is really a generic classification that crosses multiple agency lines and has a myriad of duties that it can perform, from fiscal to IT to analysis, et cetera. And we really need someone who has payroll specific background and minimum qualifications. And this would request a 1 grade increase with the new payroll manager job classification, which would align the current payroll manager 2 grades above its closest subordinate, which is typical in state service. Right now, it's 1 grade above its closest subordinate. Then we're asking for a collective bargaining assessment. This would not result in any cost, but just a reallocation of how the assessment is applied, so that we can determine for our new labor relations unit, it should be funded to support the folks that it provides services to. For efficiency units, we've proposed the elimination of an admin assistant 2 in Las Vegas. This position has been vacant for a couple of years, and we've had other positions that have sufficiently absorbed the duties of this position. Also, elimination of office space in the Grant Sawyer building. We currently are housed in Suite 1400 and 1500. Suite 1400 has ample space to move the 3 employees from Suite 1500 without harming services to any of the agencies we serve. And that would be a savings of about $25,000 per year. And with that, if I can figure out how to get rid of the presentation.
Success. There you go. Thank you. And thank you for the presentation. And I do have, I think, a handful of questions and from Assemblywoman Miller.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Yes, my questions, and especially going back to the fact that during the last legislative session, we had passed collective bargaining. It looks like there's still, my notes say 4, but I feel like I'm counting 5 actually, bargaining units that don't have exclusive representation. So I was wondering if you could explain for us the impact on those units without having the exclusive representation, and when you think that they might have representation?
We currently have 4 of the 11 units that are not represented. They have not been certified at this point by the EMRB. As far as when they may be certified, I really couldn't hazard a guess on that. I know that there are one of the units, Unit B, the clerical unit, is, I think, having a couple of unions working on being the exclusive representative for those. The other 3 that aren't represented, the professionals, non-health, the supervisory unit, and the technical aides, I'm not sure where those are at as far as representation. Currently, of the units that are represented, that's about 6,200 employees. Of the total that are eligible for representation, that's about 18,730. So about 1/3 of the employees in state service that are eligible for representation are being represented right now. I hope that answers your question, Assemblywoman.
Actually, it really doesn't. If you could speak to for the groups that are not being represented, what is the impact on them?
I don't believe there's any negative impact. They would still be covered by the current rules for state personnel administration under NRS and NAC 284. So they would still have all the benefits of classified service. They just would not have representation from a certified bargaining unit at this point.
Okay. Follow-up, Chair?
Please, I think that you and maybe a few of us are going to have a lot of questions on this. So just keep going until you get your answers.
Okay, thanks. So you started to mention that you believe that a few of the units are working with other groups, but do you have a more concise maybe or specific update on the actual process for collective bargaining and whether that results in an economic or fiscal impact? If it does, will that information be submitted to the legislature?
Peter Long, for the record, through the chair to Assemblywoman Miller. We are in the collective bargaining process right now with these 4 units. There potentially could be a fiscal impact, and that would certainly the provisions of SB 135 and would be applied, which would be once, hopefully a tentative agreement is reached, the non-economic articles would go to the Board of Examiners. The economic articles would be presented to the governor for a potential budget amendment that would go to the legislature, who would then have the ultimate authority of approving or disapproving any or all of the economic articles.
Okay. And there's a recommendation to actually fund it through the Labor Relations Unit through a new collective bargaining assessment rather than through the existing personnel assessment. Can you explain what the benefits of that would be?
I could try, but I think I would like to defer to Matt Tuma from the ASD division.
Certainly.
Matthew Tuma, administrator of ASD. So currently the personnel assessment is assessed to all state staff. That DEC unit is actually revenue neutral, where it would only assign the labor relations unit costs to the positions that can have representation in collective bargaining. So by looking at sort of how that unit has been funded in our current biennium, we felt it was appropriate to submit a decision unit to only have those costs supported by the employees and the positions that will benefit from it.
Okay. I guess I do have one final question, and it's going back to my first question about the impact for the groups that don't have representation. And it seemed like the response was, well, they are being represented by other groups and such. Since with collective bargaining now and the decisions or the recommendations being made to have to reduce and the challenges of the budget and such, were all the collective bargaining units at the table for part of these decisions or recommendations?
Peter Long, for the record, through the chair to Assemblywoman Miller. I'm not sure I understand your question, but I will say that each of the bargaining units through the union that has been designated as their exclusive representative, they have been at the table with representatives from the various units as part of the bargaining team, if that's your question.
That was to be part of the recommendation or decision-making process for that.
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you so much. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Assemblywoman Miller. And does anyone else have any questions on this budget item right here? It doesn't appear as if we do. And I know, Mr. Long, you have quite a job ahead of you. This is going to be interesting for the state, and especially for timing on budgets, and it's definitely the first go around is going to be tough. And so I appreciate everything that you're doing, and for the workers of the state of Nevada, but also for us over here on our side. Really appreciate your work on this, and be right there with you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We're trying to do our best to make it as simple as possible for everyone, but as you know, this isn't a simple process. So
I have been on both sides of a contract negotiation with a collective bargaining agreement, and I understand. All right, well, I think that is everything for this budget item, and also for you, Mr. Long, and I think that will bring us to our next account, and that is Department of Taxation. And so I believe we have Director Young up here to present there you are, I see on the screen, to present your Department of Taxation presentation for us this morning. Good morning, Director Young.
Good morning. Good morning, Chair Brooks and members of the Subcommittee on General Government. For the record, my name is Melanie Young, Executive Director for the Nevada Department of Taxation. Thank you for the opportunity to present our budget to you today, and with me are members of my executive team. And many of you have seen our budget presentation, so what we would do is quickly go into our budgetary request. But I think it's important to share at this, before we go into the budgetary request, what the Department of Taxation does on behalf of the state of Nevada, local governments, and schools. We provide fair, efficient, and effective administration of tax programs. And in fiscal year 2020, we collected $7.2 billion. And we did that efficiently and effectively. It costs the department or the general fund a half a penny to collect every dollar that comes through the department. Said another way, it's actually 48 cents to collect $100. When we compared that to other states, non-income tax states such as Washington, it was 62 cents for them to collect $100. In Tennessee, another non-income tax state, it's 55 cents to collect $100. Also, we collect 70% of the state general fund revenue. And we do this within one budget account, and that's 2361. At this point in time, I would like to bring up my presentation. So we're going to jump right down to slide 11, which starts our Governor's Recommends budget. When we prepared our budgetary request for the upcoming biennium, and then were additionally faced with budgetary reductions due to reducing state revenues, the executive team met and discussed our needs extensively and what we could do in light of the revenues reductions to the state. First, we took a deep dive into our fees, cost allocations, revenue assessments, and then we had to take a look at our largest budget expenditure, and that's personnel, and what we must have to remain status quo. Then we had to look at what it would be to take to be fully operational. As we all know, in fiscal year 2020, during the beginning months of the pandemic, we weren't operating at a full capacity. Many of our staff were sent home to work from home, and so a lot of our operating expenses were not expended to their full capacity as the state's base budget process. So what we'd like to do is go through the first proposal the department has provided, and this is an increase to the Justice Court fee. The Justice Court fee was identified as a potential source of revenue. The Justice Court fee is currently $1, which was implemented in 1991 and has not changed in over 30 years. The purpose of this fee is to cover the cost associated with the state demographer in determining the annual population of towns, townships, cities, and counties, as well as the annual report of projected populations. The fee is imposed on any person who commences answering or appearing before the Justice Court. And in looking at this and determining this fee increase, we looked at the cost for the state demographer. And thus we're proposing a fee increase from $1 to $2, and this would just cover the cost associated with that position and operating expenditures. Next, we looked at our cigarette tax allocation, which is currently authorized in NRS 370.260, which states is a compensation to the state for collecting the taxes. The department will remit the sum that the legislature specifies from the collections made as compensation to the state for the cost of collecting the cigarette taxes. The Department of Taxation transfers the taxes and licensing fees to the budget account 2361 within the department. This amount is calculated by determining the cost of the positions and associated expenditures, including cigarette stamps. The department realized it had not reviewed this cost allocation in over 5 years. So this is a difference in what the department was currently transferring for the cost of administering the cigarette tax. This change will bring in an additional $129,530 in fiscal year 22 and $138,694 in fiscal year 23. And this bill does not require a BDR to implement because it is already statutorily allowed for this transfer. Moving on, I'd like to share this proposal because this proposal is not included in the department's budget, but it is one of our measures to generate savings for the state general fund. This proposal would implement a $15 annual fee for the seller's permit. The sales and use tax permit is required for every business or person engaged in or conducting business as a seller in Nevada. The seller's permit is issued to a business when they register with the department and is required for each business location. Currently, the fee is a one-time fee of $15 that has not changed in 17 years. The last time the fee was changed was in 2003. In researching this proposal, the department surveyed other states. And 10 states charge a seller's permit fee that range anywhere from $20 to $100. And 5 states charge a renewal fee on seller's permits. Additionally, the renewal fee would help the efficiencies of the department as businesses that are not operating may not close their account because there's no incentive to do so. Currently, they may continue to keep their account open and hold on to that seller's permit, which could potentially be used to purchase tax-exempt items. The department has to monitor these accounts and follow up if sales are made to these businesses. If a business is no longer operating but holds the permit, staff time is focused on monitoring rather than being redirected to other important priorities. This proposal will bring in annually an additional $1.4 million, where $475,970 would be distributed to the general fund, and a similar amount would be distributed to local governments and schools. There is some cost associated with this decision unit, and that's the programming of our system, which would cost about $121,000. This measure also will assist the department's internal initiatives where we are working to clean up our taxpayer account records before we go into a system modernization project. Also benefiting that account cleanup project is Tax Amnesty, which will help taxpayers with their debt cleanup, and a few other projects the department is working on so that we have accurate records moving into our new system. In making this seller's permit annual, will contribute to that account cleanup, and a BDR will be submitted for this change. The final revenue proposal that we're providing here is to establish a reimbursement of cost incurred by the department. Currently, in NRS 361.530, local governments are allowed to collect an 8% commission on the gross amount collected from personal property tax by the county assessors and treasurers. The Department of Taxation currently provides this service at no cost to local entities for the evaluation as well as collection and disbursement of property taxes for centrally assessed property. This proposes to allow the department to collect a commission on the unsecured role of personal property of centrally assessed property. The department is only proposing a commission equal to the cost of administering the valuation, billing, collection, and disbursement of this tax. And a BDR will be submitted for this change. moving on to this decision unit E680, this proposes to eliminate 7 vacant positions that were authorized from the 2019 legislative session. I would like to say the department felt we were very fortunate during the 2019 legislative session where we received 25 new positions. However, many of these positions have had to be held vacant to meet budgetary savings. Therefore, the department has not been able to fill these positions, nor have we been able to recognize benefits from these positions. And we looked at what we needed again to remain status quo. Therefore, the department is recommending the elimination of these positions. These positions include 2 auditors, 1 compliance audit investigator, 1 admin assistant, 2 tax examiners, and 1 IT professional. I would like to go into each one of these positions, what they do for the department and what they do for the state. So in fiscal year 2019, the department conducted 1,427 audits with an average billing of $34,340 per audit. While audit staffing levels are a critical component to ensure the collection of taxes due to the state, the department must focus on hiring and training the current vacant audit positions. The department has been faced and is experiencing a high turnover rate among our audit staff and currently has a vacancy ratio of 23.8%. As a result of turnover, the executive team has identified some efforts we can do on staff retention and recruitment of staff when vacancies do occur. And these efforts are being developed without additional resources. These efforts include more dynamic job announcements, greater breadth and width of distribution of our job announcements using social media, as well as developing a taxation onboarding program called TOP. The TOP program will use current staffing resources to ensure that staff are hired on, gain an experience and understanding of the broad functions of the department. The department requested and received 2 compliance audited investigators during the 2019 legislative session. One of these positions is deferred until June 30, 2021 for budgetary savings, and then the other position is proposed to be eliminated. Currently, there is 11,424 liquor, cigarette, and other tobacco product locations in the state that are subject to inspection. The department conducted in fiscal year 2019 686 inspections where 14% resulted in a seizure of product. In fiscal year 2020, we conducted 677 inspections where 9% resulted in seizure. And for the first half of 2021, we have conducted 407 inspections where 18% have resulted in seizure. In summary, our investigators conducted 1,770 inspections over that time period and resulted in 148 seizures of contraband product. The department has not recognized the benefits of the eliminated position. However, if that position were not eliminated, an average of 340 additional inspections could be conducted, resulting in additional contraband being removed from the marketplace. Next, the department received a tax examiner position as a part of SB 263 from the 2019 legislative session, as well as a tax examiner that was transferred from the Cannabis Compliance Board for the Marijuana Enforcement Division, Budget 4207, when the split between the department and the Cannabis Compliance Board happened. Both of these positions were effective on January 1, 2020, and the department has not been able to fill either position. And they were recommended to remain vacant for budgetary savings. The department has implemented SB 263 and is continuing to manage the marijuana tax types with our current resources. The elimination of these vacant positions has caused the workload to be permanently redistributed to other tax examiners and could potentially delay taxpayer assistance regarding licensing, tax return filing, and other general information. However, currently the department has not seen significant impacts in these areas. The information technology position was created in the 2019 legislative session to address IT workload and has been kept vacant as a part of the reduction in revenues. The majority of the job duties were to provide programming changes for maintenance and enhancements for the department, all tax applications that include both modern and legacy systems. The source of the IT projects are business initiation, legislative changes, and any changes in the technology to align with the security standards. There may be delays in completing projects of some enhancements that may be pushed out further. The department may have to create workarounds, which may impact the department's efficiencies. And finally, the administrative assistant was to assist the functions as a result of SB 263 from the 2019 legislative session. And again, the department has implemented SB 263 and have to date accommodated the workload. However, when the department does open and become fully operational, we may see delays in processing of inspections and investigation paperwork. The next 4 slides are small decision units that would restore, maintain, or enhance the department's operational capacity. During fiscal year 2020, the department had faced reductions to the base budget and its operational budget authority as a result of savings and limited workload capacity due to COVID. This first decision unit, E231, is a proposal to adjust out-of-state travel. Now, we realize there are numerous unknowns with this request, such as when will travel to be allowed to resume, when will meetings and conferences commence. The rationale for this proposal is that leadership has been a part of the Federation of Tax Administrators. Specifically, I was appointed to their board of directors representing the Western states in June of 2019 and have been reappointed for a 2-year term in June of 2020, which has requirements to attend certain meetings. Additionally, the department is a part of Streamlined Sales Tax that has certain meeting attendance requirements. And we are fortunate that the Federation of Tax Administrators had identified the meeting locations for the next 2 years. We looked at those locations of the meetings and estimated the cost, which is the basis for this request. However, we realize that due to the pandemic, none of us know when we can return to normal and when functions of out-of-state meetings will resume. These 2 associations do provide critical resources for the department, and when travel functions can return to normal, the funding, we request that the funding be available to the department to attend these meetings. Next is Decision Unit 232, which is in-state travel was reduced to meet budgetary reduction measures. And as a result of the pandemic, in-state travel was halted and or only allowed on a necessary basis. This request would restore the needed funding for in-state travel when we can return to normal functions. The department looked at the past 3 years of travel to annualize the budgetary need. This budget authority would allow the department to reinstitute revenue officers going into the field to collect, compliance investigations, and for auditors that would need to visit the taxpayer's place of business. This next decision unit, E233, is a request for Acuity software. Is a scheduling software used by the revenue section to have appointments. This software was originally purchased in order to schedule customers during the pandemic. The expense is an ongoing due to the need to be able to schedule customers for these services. This request includes just the ongoing maintenance of the software, and we see that this would be a benefit to the department for the foreseeable future. We anticipate that when we are fully operational, and this will also be very beneficial to taxpayers, when taxpayer visits are heavy, typically during the last week of the month, this would give the taxpayers an opportunity to make an appointment, which would be a great convenience to them and their busy schedules. Currently, a taxpayer has only been able to show up at one of our 4 office locations and wait to be served. The next decision unit, E234, is software license that was purchased in fiscal year 2020, and this request will fund the ongoing maintenance of the software. This was implemented as a part of SB 263 from the 2019 legislative session. The software is used to dynamically generate PDFs and is used in our online tax portal, specifically to generate reports utilized by the department and the Attorney General's office. E235 is printing and operating GLs. The department again was substantially shut down during the pandemic, and the base expenditures were reduced at that time. In order to return to normal operations in the upcoming biennium, this funding was determined based on a 3-year average of the department's ongoing needs. This decision unit E 721 is for new software for 100 employees. The department did a survey of staff who have a need to redact, convert, and edit and manage PDF documents that are submitted by taxpayers. It was identified that based on the need, we were short about 100 licenses for staff to perform their jobs and duties with efficiency and productivity. This final decision unit here, M501, is for the background checks of employees. The department passed it last legislative session, SB 530, which is an IRS mandate. And what this does is it background checks our employees every 5 years. The department in fiscal year 2020 conducted the largest portion of background checks, and this decision unit would only be for those positions who meet the 5-year ongoing background check requirement of each of these fiscal years. That concludes our governor's recommend budget, and we realize that one-shots will be heard during bill hearings, and if the chair would prefer, we can stop here for questions. And additionally, I would like to ask if the chair would like to hear our presentations on one-shots today. Thank you.
Thank you. Actually, I think you can stop right there, and we have some questions that we'd like to get into on the budget as you just presented it. I think our first set of questions comes from Senator Dennis.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So my question has to do with some of the positions. First of all, and I think you answered these for the most part, but I want maybe if you have any additional information. First one had to do with the 2 auditor position eliminations. What's the you talked about the impact. I believe you said 340 audits maybe if you had that one person would do. Is that correct?
Thank you. For the record, I'm Melanie Young, Executive Director for the Nevada Department of Taxation. Typically, an auditor can do, and I have my Deputy Director for Compliance online, typically they can do 56 audits per year, and on average, we have an average billing of about $34,340 per audit.
So you have the 2 auditors plus the compliance auditor. So if you don't have those, what is that? I mean, what's that total impact of not having those?
So for the 2 auditors specifically, like I said, each one can do about 56 audits a year. And so we would not be able to do 112 audits. And then with each one of those have an average billing of about $34,430. Sorry, I don't have the math done really quick on that, but
68.
Yeah, it would be an impact of about $384,160 by not filling those positions.
Okay.
And then for the I apologize.
No, go ahead.
The compliance audit investigator, typically they do 340 inspections a year. And of those inspections, right now we're seeing an 18% seizure rate. And those would initiate an investigation by the department.
Okay. And then on the IT positions, you had 3 that were approved at the 2019 legislature, but are those currently vacant?
Again, Melanie Young, Executive Director. Yes, those are vacant and have been kept vacant. So we would receive 2 of the 3. And we should be able to see some efficiencies from that.
Okay, because I was trying to, in my notes, I was trying to see if that was, if you were eliminating a position that was in addition to those 3 that you had kept vacant. So it sounds like you've been able to fill 1 of the 3.
We have, of the 3, we will be able to retain 2, and this will eliminate 1 of those.
Oh, it eliminates 1, so you have the other 2. So what's the impact of not having that 3rd one?
The 3rd one was intentionally to help us reduce our backlog of IT projects. So fortunately, well, to date, all 3 positions have been vacant, and so we have not been able to address that. And so we're hopeful with being able to retain 2 of those 3. That's this third one. We should be able to see some efficiencies, and we'll work through those during this next biennium.
So, yeah, because you haven't had any of the 3, you're going to have at least the 2 that will help.
Yes.
So it won't be as bad as if you don't have the 3. Okay, and then on the positions that came because of SB 263, since some of those were provided through that bill, how has the department addressed the workload related to regulation of vapor and alternative nicotine products, wholesalers and retailers?
Thank you, Melanie Young, Executive Director for the Nevada Department of Taxation. We have implemented SB 263, and we did fill one of the compliance audit investigator positions. Regulations have been developed, and we're working through the, like I said, it has been implemented. And so if at this time I could turn over the rest of the question to my Deputy Director, Terry Upton, to provide some additional answers to your questions.
Great, that would be great. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Young. Terry Upton. For the record, with the staff for SB 263 that was eliminated, we have transferred whatever those duties were over to additional staff members who are seeing that the new vape accounts are licensed, and we've issued letters of instruction to them, and we are following up with them fairly closely to make sure that they have everything they need to conduct business in Nevada.
So by eliminating these positions, you've transferred it to other people. Are they able to keep up with the workload?
Right now, because COVID has decreased the amount of traffic into the department, businesses have closed. We are managing that workload. However, after COVID, once we see businesses reopening, we may have a challenge with that. And as Director Young said, some processes will be delayed, such as licensing and facilitating hearings.
It just depends on the recovery, right? The recovery part. So, okay, I think that's all I have, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Dennis. I believe Assemblywoman Hadegui has a few questions on.
I do. Thank you, Chair. And I'm going to apologize right now. I lost my internet connection at the beginning of your presentation. So if you answered a couple of my questions, I apologize. I was able to jump on midway through your presentation, but mine are going to be on Decision Unit E681. I want to go to the increase in commission on personal property. I know originally there was the 8% commission that was collected, and now it looks like there's the additional 8% that's being collected on top of that. And so I wanted just to ask how you guys got to that 8% additional commission number, and if you guys did an impact study on what kind of impact this was going to have on local government.
So Melanie Young, Executive Director for the Nevada Department of Taxation. During your question, for some reason, either my internet froze or yours froze. So could you please restate your question?
Absolutely. It's probably mine. It sounds like I'm having some internet issues. So it was just regarding the newly assessed commission on personal property. I know originally there's the 8%, but then there's the recommendation for the additional 8%. So I want to know how you guys got to that 8% number for the additional commission that's going to be assessed, and then whether there was an impact study done on how this would affect local governments.
Thank you for the question, Assemblywoman Hadegui. For the record, Melanie Young, Executive Director. I would like to clarify a couple things in regards to your question. So what the department did is we're comparing the 8%, which is a commission that local governments are allowed to currently receive when they collect from their personal property tax and county assessors. That's currently in statute. And then, so what the department is saying, we would like to be reimbursed for our cost. So it was just a comparison factor. And I do have my deputy director over local government services, Jeff Mitchell, who can provide some additional details on that. Thank you.
Okay, no, I think you answered my question. So the 8% that the local governments collect isn't going to be impacted at all?
No, this would be just impacted. So the department collects, we assess and collect the, I'm trying to find my notes here. We evaluate and collect the disbursement on personal property taxes on centrally assessed properties. So what that is properties that cross over county lines. And so for businesses that are throughout the state of Nevada. And so we do that at no cost to the local governments, and the general fund covers the cost currently. And so we looked at the positions associated with that function and are asking to only be reimbursed for the department's cost. Right now, those costs are $135,000 in the first year and $137,000 in the second year. So those costs would be taken off the top of what the department collects, and the rest would be distributed to the local governments. So it would be spread across the 17 counties and would likely be a de minimis amount to those counties.
Okay, thank you. You, Ms. Young. And then this is where I jumped on, and I think you answered my question, and I just want to be clear because this is where I was able to rejoin the meeting. When we were speaking about the fee increase, on the Justice Court fee increase from $1 to $2, that fee increase, will it be enough to cover 100% of the state demographer?
Melanie Young, Executive Director for the Nevada Department of Taxation. Yes, was almost exactly $1 increase because that $1 was initiated over 30 years ago. The salary and expenses associated with the state demographer, it actually came out to almost exactly doubling that to $2.
Thank you. And then my last question, Chair, if I could have a follow-up. Okay, and I completely missed this part of your presentation, so you might have answered this, but it was regarding the adjustment to the administrative fee for cigarette tax and other tobacco products. Did you share, and if you did, sorry if I missed it, how you guys arrived at the calculation on the administrative fee and how the updated position costs were calculated?
Yes, thank you, Melanie Young, Executive Director for the Nevada Department of Taxation. We looked at the employees associated with that function and looked at how much time and effort that they're putting into that and did a desk audit. And so when we realized we had not looked at that assessment in over 5 years, it was time to readdress that. And so that's how we did that.
Okay, thank you. And thank you, Chair. That was the end of my questions.
Thank you.
Thank you, Assemblywoman Hadagi. Appreciate that. And thank you, Young, for answering those questions for us. I believe we have a question from Assemblywoman Gorlow on the next or one of the decision units in this budget.
Yes, thank you, Chair Brooks. I had a question regarding the operating expenditures in E235. Could you explain a little bit how the agency determined that operating expenditures should be increased beyond the amounts that were approved by the 2019 legislature?
Thank you, Assemblywoman Gorlow, for the question. Melanie Young, Executive Director for the Nevada Department of Taxation. When we looked at our fiscal year 2020 base budget, we did an M150 adjustment, and because we didn't spend all of our authority due to not being fully functional during a period of time, we looked back over a 3-year period and said that 3-year period would be a good adjustment for this. However, in speaking with your legislative staff, I think there might be an error in that that calculation and in that decision unit. It was not our intention to increase our operating expenses greater than what is currently legislatively approved. And so what we would like to do is work with your staff on potentially an adjustment there.
Thank you so much for that clarification.
Thank you. And if we do not have any further questions on those budgets, we'd love to hear maybe about, you can jump back into your one-shots and walk through what those are going to be for.
Wonderful. Let me return to sharing my screen. So the first one shot that we have here is an office consolidation efficiency measure. And what that is in our Las Vegas offices, we have an office in Henderson and one in the Grant Sawyer building. We are currently at capacity in both of those offices. I want to make sure I get to my notes correctly. And what this will do, it will allow us to consolidate cost for both of those offices. During the last biennium, we really met with all of our staff, and one of the things that they asked for was additional staff to cover the support of both of these offices. And so by consolidating them, we're able to find savings by cost avoidance by not having to hire additional supervisory coverage for both of the offices. And also by eliminating duplicative, we have security guards at each one of those offices, extra camera coverage, armored car pickup, and different things like that. So by consolidating these two offices, we are able to, again, we're at capacity in both of these offices. So we're looking to find greater space and can find some ongoing savings with that. Next is our technology investment request. We began our unified tax system modernization efforts in fiscal year 2020. And over the course of the project, we worked with Gartner, with our staff and leadership to understand the current state of business for the department and our processes and our technology footprint to support tax administration. Gartner used this information and developed our current state assessment, which is our starting point to address our future state processes. Functional and additional requirements and technical requirements, as well as moving forward with identifying the readiness of the department for a modernization project of this magnitude. And they've generated a roadmap to guide the department in areas for improvement and culminating with a benefits realization analysis, business case study, and finally a solution strategy. Through analyzing our current architecture alternatives, such as a custom developed solution, a best of breed solution, and a commercial off the shelf solution called COTS, Gartner has helped us identify the direction of procuring a COTS integrated tax solution to support the future needs of our core tax administration. These options were evaluated and based on established criteria and vetted with the department's executive leadership. As a part of our fiscal year 2020 budget reductions, $940,000 was reverted to the general fund from our modernization project. This project was placed on hold in fiscal year 2021, and after our phase 1, step 3, our documented case business. This funding would allow the department to continue with the project and start implementing the Gartner recommended readiness assessment and set up project organization and governance, establish and execute the data management strategy, develop and execute the change management strategy, and procure and implement a document imaging system. The develop the RFP for the COT solution and release the RFP for the first quarter in calendar year 2023. The vendor selection process will start in the third quarter of calendar year 2023. This request is $2.9 million, and due to the timeline of this project, what it will do is it will put the bulk of the modernization project into the next biennium. And we can cover this decision unit more when the bill is heard. So next, what we have here are 3 small decision units for desktop computer and laptop replacements, printer replacements, and some hardware and software replacements. And so those are our one-shots. And I'm available for questions.
Thank you. Thank you for going over that with us. I don't see any questions from members on those one shots. Senator Dennis, do I see you? Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, just a quick question, Mr. Chair. And I know she said she's going to cover it in the bill. I just want to make sure I understand this. So that 2.9 million that's coming in that request is to basically get us to right to where we need to be to start to implement then a new system, right? So it will allow us to do whatever we need to do to get our data ready, and also to do the what was it you just said, the not the microfiche, but the recording of all the data. Is that correct?
Yes, Melanie Young, Executive Director for the Nevada Department of Taxation. Thank you, Senator Dennis, for the questions. Yes, it will get the department ready for our system modernization project through change management, setting up the office for the project management, and as well as implementing the document solution strategy. What I would say is currently the department on its document solution strategy, that happens on the backside of the house. And what we're hoping to do is implement a strategy that when tax returns come in, they're scanned and documented at that point in time. It'll allow us to become more efficient and be able to address our taxpayer resources and needs sooner.
Will it also prepare you to do the data migration to the new system?
Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you for the questions.
Thank you, Senator Dennis. Again, I don't think I see any further questions from Department of Taxation. I do have one comment. I mean, you made a statement early when you started the presentation this morning that that the Department of Taxation operates very lean and about 48 cents for every $100 collected, and then comparing us to our neighboring states or states that are similarly situated with our tax situation. That is commendable, and I just wanted to make sure that I heard that, and you're doing a lot more with less, and we appreciate your efforts, and this is incredibly important in the finance committees. This is a very important role that you play in the entire keeping the whole state running. So appreciate everything you're doing.
Thank you, Melanie Young, Executive Director, for the record. I appreciate those comments. And yes, you did hear that correctly, 48 cents to collect every $100.
That's great. So thank you for joining us this morning, Ms. Young, and presenting your budgets. And with that, I believe we are done with our that agenda item. And we can move on to our last agenda item, which is public comment. BPS, will you make sure that the phone lines are open and see if anyone's on, please?
Thank you so much, Chair. The public line is open and working, and there are no callers at this time.
I would like to give that at least a minute to see if anyone watching jumps on.
Certainly, Chair. Thank you so much. Broadcast standing by.
Well, if we do not have any public called in that would like to comment today, I think we can close the meeting. And would ask all the committee members and staff that helped us today, appreciate it, and have a wonderful weekend. With that, we are now adjourned.